Now, what is up, my fellow prod coders? Welcome to this video, and today we will start working on making our application dynamic. And we're also going to use React hooks for the first time in this application, so stay tuned. Let's see. So in here, if we enter something, so this is the finished application, then you see that we get redirected to /search and that we have two query parameters. And this is exactly the stuff that we entered before. And this is the behavior that we want to work on first. So let me just kill the application, like the finished application, and let's start out what we already have. And I just want to show you another thing really quick because I just noticed it. If you type something in and you hit tab, then you see that this gray button here, this static button, gets focused. And then if you hit tab again, then you end up in the next input. So this is actually not what we want. We don't want this button to be focused because it's just a little bit inconvenient for the user. And this is a fairly easy fix. So if we go to our code, we see, oh yeah, this button here is, or this element here is a button. And so it makes total sense that it gets focused. So what we can do is we can just replace this button with a div. Let's just make a div out of it. And let's also make a div out of this paragraph, because nesting a div inside a paragraph, that kind of doesn't work on a semantic level. So now if we enter something, yes, nice. So yeah, now we can hit tab and we end up in the second input. Nice. So let's just quickly recap what we need to do. So somehow this search bar here, somehow in this search bar, we need to record what the user types in. So we will need some state, and then we need to redirect the user, or we need to do something. Like something is supposed to happen if you click on this search button. Right now, nothing happens. And let's just start with capturing what the user types in. And this is the very first time, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to use React hooks, and we're going to use the use state hook. And by using the use state hook, we can introduce some state to a functional component. So this is really, really new, and it basically just came out. So let's just say we want to save what term the user entered, and that's why we say use state props.term or empty string. So what does this mean? Well, it essentially means please give me, please introduce some state into our functional component, and let's call it term. And every time we want to update our term, we just call this setter method. And that's why, and we use this array notation here to just destructure the elements. So useState returns an array, and we just pick the first two items. And you already see it in the red part down here. We of course need to import a useState. And then in here, we can pass the initial value. And what we simply do is we say, okay, if someone has passed props.term, then the initial value will be props.term. If not, it's going to be empty string. And in our landing page, since it is the first page, because it's a landing page, no one passes anything, so it will just be empty string at first. And we just use the very same approach for our location. So the exact same. Now we have these two variables. Nice. But we don't do anything with them, so they don't get updated. And that's the next thing we will take care of. So let's go to our input field in here, and yeah, maybe let's add let's space this thing out here a little bit over multiple lines so that it's easier to read. And what we are just going to do is we are going to add prop or a handler which is called onChange. And this function here is called every time something changes in the text field. So on every keystroke that the user does, this function will be called. And now everything we need to do is we just need to say, okay, set term. So let's call our setter. And now we need to pass the current value or the current text of our input. And this is event.target.value. And by the way, this event.target.value, this is not specific to React. This is just standard JavaScript or HTML. Okay, so and let's do the very same thing for our location here, because we need this value as well. So we can just copy this. We can paste it down here. And instead of calling set term, we will say set location. Cool, so now on every keystroke that the user does, we are updating our two variables, term and location. So that's pretty good. But yeah, I mean, that's not quite it, right? Because, well, what happens now if someone clicks enter? Well, if we really think about it, then this search bar is actually a form. And if you click the search button or hit enter, then you are submitting this form. But right now, the parent element is a div. So let's just remove this div and make it a form. And now it makes more sense, right? So if we hit enter or if we click on search, then something is supposed to happen. And let's just define what exactly is supposed to happen in a new function. So let's just say onSubmit. And we get the event here. Maybe let's call this E, because it's called E all the time, and just to stay consistent with what we already have. And maybe let's just console log our term and our location here. Okay, so right now, if we say onSubmit equals onSubmit. So now if someone hits enter, the form gets submitted and this function gets called. And now one super important thing which people forget all the time, and with people I also mean myself, so I forget that all the time, to call event.preventDefault. Because the standard behavior of submitting a form is that the browser makes an AJAX call to the website, to the server. But we don't want that because we have a single page application. And this event.preventDefault is therefore really, really important. Cool. So now we have our onSubmit function wired up. But the user could also click this, this red search button, like this one here. So we also need to call this function when someone clicks on this button. So let's just say onClick equals, and then onSubmit. Maybe let's not call this onSubmit. Let's just call it submit. Because this onSubmit, or like this on prefix, is usually reserved for events. Nice. So let's just go to our application. Let's open a terminal or the inspector. Let's type something in. Let's hit enter and bam, you see it. So now if we hit enter, our form gets submitted, we prevent the default, and we dump the content to the console. And you see that our updating logic is working. So on every keystroke, our variables get updated, and once they are submitted, we log them to the console. So right now we haven't done the redirection thing, but since this video is already quite long, let's just leave it as it is right now, and let's continue in the next section. So thank you very much for watching. Please make sure to give the video a thumbs up, and also please don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so.